is awesome to be here with you guys tonight. Thank you so much for inviting me in and having me here. I can't wait to see what you guys are up to for the rest of the class. This entire course sounds like something I wish had existed a long time ago. So it's great that you're all here and you're doing this. I can't wait to hire some of you. I wanted to quickly give a background on who I am, because you have no idea who I am, and just talk really conversationally, really casually about what I did to get to be doing what I'm doing now, because I feel really like I'm in a job and an industry like where I pinch myself every day, the people I get to work with, the types of problems I'm working on. And I just wanted to share some of that with you guys in case it happens to be inspiring for you too, which of course if you're in this class, hopefully some part of it is. So I am a designer. I like to make things. I live and work here in San Francisco, and I advise and work with startups and technology companies. Prior to working with startups and tech companies, I worked at IDEO for about 5 years, helping with innovation and design support across really big, exciting companies. But before I get into some of those details, I figured I would step all the way back and tell you a little bit about where I came from. I'm from Dallas. You'll catch me with the occasional y'all. I almost wore my cowboy boots, but I opted against it. So I'm from Dallas. I decided to go to college in Nashville because I was looking for a liberal arts college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like, what a scary, scary question. What do you want to do? Where are you headed? What college do you want to be in? What do you want to major in? Like, hello, I have no idea. So I went to a liberal arts school in Nashville, and I just played. I prototyped my way through college. Let's never tell my parents that. I essentially, I took every class. I said yes to everything. I signed up for crazy assignments, going on crazy spring break activities, meeting all sorts of people, doing everything I could. So I was just hoping that the process would reveal itself to me what I really wanted to be doing. And through it all, I fell in love with art. I fell in love with art history. I fell in love with talking to other artists. I started painting. I started drawing. I started making these crazy videos. And I also started taking on a lot of internships, which you should totally, totally do. Work for as many people as you can all the time. I guess maybe even now I'm working for as many people as I possibly can. Things don't change. It's awesome to work with a lot of people. And this was maybe one of the most unique work experiences I've ever had. I picked up all my stuff. I went to Washington, D.C., and I worked for Larry King Live for a summer, which all of my friends were like, what? You're going to work for Larry King Live? Do you guys know who Larry is? Yes, he has the suspenders. He has a talk show host. And I went and worked there for a summer, and it was fascinating. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing, but I went and I helped write shows. I helped bring in guests. I had to prep Dolly Parton for a show one night, which was unforgettable because in her contract, I think it said that Larry was not allowed to ask her about any plastic surgery or I think her marriage. There were some things that were legally off limits. And I remember thinking but everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to know, is it real? Are they real? And Larry went on the set and he said, well, Dolly, we have a question from the audience. The audience, there was no audience, by the way. The audience wants to know, are you fake? And I was like, wow, way to go, Larry. He totally got around all the legalities by saying it was from the audience. And he said, are they fake? And Dolly looked at Larry and she said, Larry, if it's sagging, dragging, or lagging, I suck it, tuck it, and pluck it. So that was a summer to remember. I did everything from writing scripts to helping out Dolly Parton to doing lighting on the set to prepping somebody to go on set, meeting people. I mean, you do everything. Say yes to everything. This was what that summer was about. And it turned out that I loved film. I loved film. I mean, I didn't want to go work at Larry King Live, but there was something about what I was doing there that I really liked. So why not keep exploring this thing that seemed really interesting to me? So I packed up all my stuff, and after graduating, I moved to Chicago. And I enrolled at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, again, hoping that something would reveal itself to me over time. And in Chicago, I enrolled in the film program. after being on the set at Larry King Live, I realized I loved storytelling. And I didn't really know how I was going to make a career out of it. I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to make stories. I knew I wanted to think about narrative. I wanted to write something. I wanted to explore. And so I started exploring with film. And I had this amazing professor who gave an assignment. And halfway through the assignment, I realized it was almost over and I hadn't shot any film, because I was so busy editing and editing and editing every little frame. And she said, you know, take a step away from the film and make a book. Make a book. You're so interested in every frame of film. Maybe you're actually more interested in pages than you are in like frames of a film. So why don't you make a book? So I made a book, and it turned out I loved graphic design. Again, life will reveal itself to you over time. I finished my master's in graphic design. I had this crazy portfolio filled with film work and all these different experimental things that I thought were like so much fun. And I thought, where in the world can I like put all of this stuff into a portfolio and show it to somebody and get a job? And I heard about this magical little place called IDEO. IDEO is actually founded right here in Palo Alto, or just down the street in Palo Alto. And I went to the website, and I'm sure you guys have done this. Like, I clicked on careers, I like scanned all of the careers, and I thought there was this one position. It was called storyteller. And I saw this position, and I thought, like, oh my gosh, that's me. Like, I'm totally going to get this job. I had no idea. Like, so many people apply to IDEO, and anyway, so I put together like what I thought was kind of my wildest storytelling, and I sent it to IDEO.com, and I got hired. It was crazy. Like, still to this day, like I always say to people, like, you apply through the internet and it works. Like, you don't need to have like a friend. You don't need to have like a connection. Like, really, I mean, good work will get through the web portal wherever you go. So they found me. I found them. It was a match. So this is a photo of a ton of people at IDEO, and these are all the different types of folks at IDEO. So IDEO helps companies innovate through a deep understanding of people, through very user-centered research, very user-centered design. People and cultures are at the center of everything that I did at IDEO. And amongst all of these people, I would probably be like next to this branding person, or ooh, I'd be back there. I'd be a communication designer. But there's tons of different people, like architects and business designers and engineers. And the thinking is that if you pull together these cross-disciplinary teams, and you have an architect, an engineer, a graphic designer, all working on the same problem, they'll all try to solve it differently. And in the end, if you can all agree on how to solve it, the problem ends up being so much richer. I guess the solution ends up being so much richer, so much more interesting when you've got someone who's just looking at fonts, you have someone just looking at the industrial design, someone just looking at how it fits into a business. It becomes a really robust solution. So here are a handful of the different projects, some of which you might have heard of. So IDEO invented the very first mass production mouse for Apple. Since then, has done everything from reinventing Social Security to different web platforms like OpenIDEO. You guys might have heard of OpenIDEO. It's a really cool way to participate in group collective design challenges. But through it all, like, the one most important thing about being at IDEO is that it's user-centered. It's inspired by people. So I mean, I spent probably the better part of 5 years in people's homes, or following them around the store, or sitting. I had to sit with a guy like in his pantry once to figure out how he organized his crackers. I had to watch a guy in London, an older man who was about probably 80 or 85. We're trying to design some medical packaging, and I had to sit there and watch him fumble through this package that I had designed because I made the typeface too small. And as a designer, I want to make the typeface small. I want it to look really great. But as a part of this disease that this man had, he was losing his eyesight. And I thought, God, I'm such a jerk. Here I am. I want to make the type nice and small. I want to make the package perfect. But the dude who needs this product can't read the directions. So talk about like humbling as a designer to sit there in front of people and watch them fumble through your stuff. You'll get better really fast. Startups. So I've since left IDEO, and I'm working with startups. And the same love for designing for people, making things human, making them accessible, it translates to all of the different products that you see coming out of the Bay Area right now. You guys are all probably working on them too. How many of your products are mobile? Lots? Some? They're all mobile. Well, it's a good thing I chose this picture. So the same thing happens with an app, right? So I will divulge to you all that I have enormous hands. It's very embarrassing, but it actually makes me a great tester for phones because they always make the buttons too small. And if you have fat fingers like me, you really need the buttons to be the right size. So when you're thinking about mobile design, and this is what I'm focusing on right now, the opportunity to make things user-friendly, to make things accessible, to actually build things that not only work, but that are successful from a UI and UX perspective is huge. It's so huge. And one of the reasons I love designing for mobile so much is because there's so many constraints around mobile. Right? Like with a website, you can do anything. It's so unrestricted. But with your phone, there's a lot of limitations, right? Like whether you're on iOS, whether you're on Android, the size, how many buttons. It's much more structured. I actually find it really a creative platform to be designing on. And that's exclusively the teams that I'm working with right now. This is one of them, Orchestra. You should download the app. It's a productivity app. And they're on both iOS and on Android. But OK, I have 5 minutes. I'll speed along. One of the things I wanted to do before I jumped into some examples of how we're prototyping in this startup was quickly talk about a tool called being T-shaped. Have you guys heard of this? No? OK, good. So I first heard about this at IDEO. I think this is such a cool way to think about your skills, especially as you guys are growing and going forward and learning and doing new things. On the tall vertical axis, this is your depth, your expertise. This is what you're really good at. This is why somebody would hire you. Your breadth, these are all of the other things that you're also probably really passionate about or interested in, but maybe aren't like your core expertise. 2007, this was when I was first hired at IDEO. I was hired, I had a traditional background in graphic design, typography, packaging, print, brand. I also was doing a lot of stuff with film and with video. And ultimately, I really love storytelling. Across the top, you can see that like I was dabbling in interactive and copywriting. Fast forward 5 years to today, 2012. My depth pretty much stayed the same, except these things got more complicated. They got more complex just based on having 5 years of experience, right? Maybe I was doing a brand identity before. Now I'm doing like massive brand strategy, expression, these huge, huge projects for these big companies. And now, instead of like interactive design being at the top, it's a part of my depth. I think this is a really cool way for you guys to think about your skills. And especially over time, how do you want it to develop? So like in 10 years, 2022, what would your T-shape look like? Would it be really short, like maybe you just want to have a little bit of expertise, but like a ton of breadth, like I think they say an inch deep and a mile wide? Or do you want it to be kind of in the same ratio of these as having like a long depth and like a growing width across the top? I love this because I was never somebody that said like, I'm just good at this one thing. I felt like I was always kind of interested in a lot of things. And so this tool was really cool for me. So you should sketch out your T, like, is it longer than it is wide? Is it wider than it is deep? I think this is really helpful. OK, how do you test a UI design user experience? It is so messy. It is so messy. It's supposed to be. Get Post-its. Get tons and tons of Post-its, the long ones, the rectangular ones, this size. Do you know what I'm talking about? Are you already doing this? No. OK, get Post-its and get a Sharpie. Why Sharpies? Because if you use pencils, I'm a designer. I want to design every detail. I want the curve on the button to be just right. But with a Sharpie, you have to make big, fast gestures. You can't get caught up in the details. You can't over-design it. This is like 2 weeks ago. That's me. That's my colleague, Peter. And this is us building a mobile app. This is what it looks like. It is so messy. There are Post-its all over the table. There's screens on the wall, and literally we're using Post-its. We're drawing on them quickly with Sharpies, we're putting them on our phone, and we're stacking Post-its on top of Post-its. Literally, like, I had to tear like Post-its up to make little buttons to stick them on. And then literally I gave the phone to somebody and I said, like, use my prototype. And they would like pretend to push a Post-it and I would pull it off, and then they would push something else and I'd pull it off. Thank you. It's such a fast way to prototype. I mean, the faster and the messier you can be, like, just think through this stuff. And Post-its for me, like, were a godsend because you could stay out of the computer and you could get into all of this complexity. This is an example of an entire app last year that I helped redesign. And it's literally thinking about every single screen and every single user experience, every single button, where it takes you, why does it take you there, asking tons and tons of questions, dissecting every bit of it. But again, you can come back to Post-its, you can come back to prototyping quickly and feverishly to actually get this into somebody's hands. And I even have a video, maybe I can walk around and show it later, but one of the things that we did last week, which was really, really cool, is we built an entire mobile app with Post-its, like literally on the table. We had it all like queued up, all the different screens and buttons and everything. This, I mean, it sounds super low fidelity, but so much thinking went into all of these screens. We just didn't put it in the computer. It was just on paper. And we put it down on the table, and we put a camera. We rigged a camera up top. And the camera was focused just on the screen. And we pretended like it was like a video of somebody using the app. And you can see on the video, it's like, it makes sense. Like, you can imagine what the app would do, where screens would take you, how things would move on the screen. And once you actually have an app that begins behaving like the real thing and not just on sketches, you can begin to be the user. You can begin to feel like how this thing is going to be, how it's going to start coming to life, how it's going to behave, how it's going to act. You don't know any of that stuff when you just look at a sketch. But when you begin building out an entire experience, you can be the user. Or I could give it to you, and I could have you go through it, and you be the user. I could pick somebody like my mom who's always complaining about fonts being too small. I could give it to her, and she could go through it, and she could tell me, you know, what her thoughts are. And the more people you can show it to and get their feedback, the better, because nothing that you do is precious, or at least it shouldn't be, because once it goes to market, it goes to market. And then once it's out in the real world, you can iterate it, but it's already live. So getting as much feedback as you can up front is key. The last thing I wanted to leave you guys with is a piece of advice that I got from a really amazing woman here in Palo Alto. Her name's Jane Tite. She asked me 2 questions recently. She said, if you answer the question around what makes you happy, and if you answer the question around what gives you meaning, list out all of those things and align your next move, your next decision. I'm thinking more like in terms of your larger career, less in terms of just this product or this project. But really align your life around the answer to these 2 questions, and you'll be guaranteed to grow. And I loved that quote. I love this question from her, because as you're thinking about you know, in the bigger picture, like where you are and what you want to be doing next, what is really, really fun? I mean, what you do with your career it should be amazing, right? It should rock. It should be so awesome that you like pinch yourself every single day. And you guys are at a really, really cool point where if you just start thinking about like what's effortless, what's really, really fun, like what does meaningful work mean? For me, like, building iOS apps and like building out these things that I think really will improve people's lives, improve the way that somebody moves through the world, the way they interact with others, the way that they might experience a certain place or a product or an interaction, like, dang, that gives me meaning. Like, what a cool way to impact people's everyday lives. It's so huge through something that is really so fun. And so I just wanted to close on this quote that I read the other day that I thought, oh my gosh, I want to share it at this class. I read this quote that said, it's it's all about planting the little acorns from which the mighty oak trees grow. And I feel like what you guys are doing in this class and the things that y'all are building are like the acorns. The things that I'm like working with my colleague Peter on, like over at Orchestra and the rest of the team, like we're building these little acorns. And sometimes it can be like, wait, what are we doing? Why, like, what's this gonna be? How's it gonna come into the world? And occasionally, I mean, like, look at some of the products you guys use. Think about some of the experiences that are like guaranteed givens that you do every day. Like I check Path every day. I'm on Instagram every day. All of these little things are the mighty oak trees, and they came from a class or an environment or a moment just like this, what you guys are doing. So that's it for now.